The thing about scars is that they don't disappear. They fade, sure. They shrink into the background of your skin until you almost forget they're there. But the moment something grazes them, a look, a word, a laugh, pitched at exactly the wrong angle, they bloom back to life like they never left, like time didn't happen at all. That's the thought running through my mind as I stand in the doorway of room 214, Hargrove Hall, staring at the back of a head I would recognize anywhere. That specific shade of dark brown hair, slightly overgrown at the nape of his neck, curling just enough at the ends that it looks careless when it's probably not. Broad shoulders filling out a plain gray t-shirt. One arm raised, hand pressed flat against the wall as he peers at the small notice taped above the window about quiet hours and fire exit protocols. My mouth goes dry. My stomach does something complicated and unpleasant, the kind of thing that happens when your nervous system recognizes a threat before your brain has finished processing the visual information. Roberto Frost. Of all the dorm rooms, in all the universities, in all the world, he walked into mine. I take exactly one step backward, the heel of my shoe catching on the doorframe, and the small stumble I make is just loud enough. He turns around, and there it is. That face. Jaw sharper than I remembered, cheekbones more defined, a faint shadow of stubble he definitely didn't have at 17. But the eyes are the same. Dark and direct, the kind that always made me feel like he could see something I hadn't meant to show anyone, like he was always looking for the gap in the armor. For a full 3 seconds, neither of us speaks. The hum of the building's air conditioning fills the silence between us like a third presence, and somewhere down the hall, a door bangs shut, and someone laughs, and the world keeps going. Entirely indifferent to the small catastrophe happening in room 214. Then something crosses his face that I am completely unprepared for. Not smugness. Not that slow, curving smile I'd spent years cataloging in my memory under the category of things that made my life miserable. What crosses Roberto Frost's face when he sees me standing in the doorway of the room we apparently now share is something that looks remarkably, uncomfortably like relief. Josh, he says, my name in his mouth. I haven't heard that in 2 years. In high school, it was always Mac, spat like an accusation or used as a punchline, or sometimes something worse depending on the day. My actual name, first name, full name, that was new. That was strange in a way I couldn't categorize. No, I say. Which is not a complete sentence, but it is the most honest thing I can produce right now. He takes a small step toward me. I know. No, I say again, and I back out into the hallway with my duffel bag hitting the doorframe on the way, and I walk very quickly in the direction of the elevator, and I think, very clearly, I need a new university. I do not get a new university. What I get instead is a very tired RA named Priya who listens to my request for a room transfer with the patience of someone who has already fielded 14 of these conversations today, consults her clipboard, and informs me that Hargrove Hall is at 100% capacity and has been since June. What about other dorms? I ask. Priya taps something on her tablet. Whitmore is full. Ellison is full. The new building across from the science quad has a wait list of 40 people. She looks up at me. I can put you on a general transfer list. But realistically, the earliest I'd expect anything to open up is October. November if people decide they like it here. October, November, that's months. That's an entire first semester of college, spent sleeping 6 feet away from the person who made my last 2 years of high school feel like wading through wet concrete every single day. 2 years of calculated, deliberate social excavation. 2 years of comments pitched just low enough to be deniable, of silences that said exactly the right thing at exactly the wrong time, of a kind of attention that felt like being studied for weakness. I thank Priya. I take the transfer list form. I fold it carefully and put it in the front pocket of my bag, and then I go and sit on the bench outside Hargrove Hall for 20 minutes, watching students cross the quad with boxes and laundry bags, and the bright specific energy of people who are genuinely excited about where they've landed. I try to remember why I was excited about this. And I was. I genuinely was. Caldwell University had been my first choice since junior year. The journalism program, the campus newspaper with its actual print edition and its track record of producing people who went on to do real work. The library that looked like something out of a movie. The seminar-style classes that actually asked you to think rather than absorb. I'd wanted this specific place, and I'd worked for it, and I'm not going to let him take it from me the way he took things from me before. I stand up, straighten my bag strap, roll my shoulders back, and walk back into the building. He's made his bed by the time I return. His side of the room is already taking shape. A small succulent on the windowsill, a stack of books on the desk that I refuse to read the spines of, a photograph tucked into the corner of the mirror above his dresser that I can't quite make out from across the room. He's sitting at his desk with his laptop open, but when I come in, he closes it immediately. The kind of immediate that says he'd been listening for me. I didn't know, Roberto says before I've even set my bag down, that we'd be placed together. I want you to know that. Okay, I say. I set my bag on the unoccupied bed. I start unpacking. Josh. I'm not doing this right now. My voice comes out steadier than I expect. Something to be grateful for, small and real. I'm going to unpack, and then I'm going to figure out where the dining hall is, and then I'm going to sleep, because I drove 4 hours to get here, and I'm tired, and this has already been a lot. Whatever you want to say can wait. A pause. He considers, and I can feel him considering, the way you feel a change in air pressure. Okay, he says. I unpack. He doesn't try to talk to me again. At some point, he leaves, quietly, without announcement or explanation. Just the soft click of the door, and I finish putting my things away in the strange, muffled silence of a room that suddenly has no one else in it. I sit on my newly made bed. I press the heels of my hands against my eyes until I see patterns, the phosphine light show of pressure applied to closed lids. I stay there for a while. This is fine. I can do this. People survive worse than an uncomfortable living situation. People survive things much worse than this every single day, and they get up and make their coffee and go to class and build lives anyway. I know how to survive uncomfortable things. I have had a lot of practice. I repeat that to myself a few times. It helps, a little, the way a bandage helps. It doesn't fix anything, but it gives you something to press against the wound. His name in my phone from 2 years ago is still there. I'd never deleted it. I'd told myself that was laziness, not significance. And I still tell myself that now, as I scroll past it on my way to texting my older sister Dana. He's my roommate, I type to her. Or Roberto Frost is my college roommate. Her response comes back in under a minute. What? Then, before I can respond, I'm calling yous. Then, pick up. I pick up. Josh. Her voice is the voice she uses when she's trying very hard to be calm on my behalf. I know this voice well. She used it a lot in high school. Tell me everything. So I do. I sit cross-legged on my new bed in my new room, and I tell my sister everything. Starting from the moment I walked through the door and ending with the folded transfer request form currently sitting in my bag, and the way the air in this room feels like something suspended, waiting. She listens without interrupting, which is unusual for Dana and means she's taking this seriously. What did he look like? She asks when I'm done. Dana, that's your first question? I'm building a full picture. What did he look like? That is not the relevant detail here. It might be. I'm the one with perspective. What did he look like? I look at the wall. His side of the room, from where I'm sitting, is visible in my peripheral vision. The small succulent catching the last of the afternoon light. The stack of books with their spines turned away from me, which I try not to assign meaning to. The photograph tucked into the corner of the mirror, which I still haven't looked at directly. Older, I say. He looks older. His jaw is different. He has stubble now. Dana makes a sound that I choose not to interpret. And what did he say to you? That he didn't know we'd be placed together. Do you believe him? I think about the look on his face when he turned around. That strange flash of something that looked too much like relief for comfort. I don't know, I say. Maybe. Okay. Okay. She exhales slowly. Okay, here's what I think. You have two options. One, you survive until October and transfer rooms and never have to deal with him again except in passing. Two, there is no option two, Dana. Option two, she continues, undeterred. Because she has been undeterring things since she was approximately 6 years old and I have never once successfully stopped her. You figure out who he is now, separate from who he was, and you decide from there. He's the person who spent 2 years making my life difficult for no apparent reason. People change, Josh. You've never even met him. No, but I know you. And I know that you already considered option two the moment you walked back into that room instead of sleeping in the quad. A pause. You stayed in the room. I don't say anything, Josh. You stayed in the room when you could have camped outside for one night and escalated first thing in the morning. It was the practical choice, I mutter. Sure it was. She laughs, soft and knowing, and I let myself be annoyed at her for it because the alternative is admitting she might have a point. Get some sleep. Text me tomorrow. Yeah, I say. Night, Dana. Night. And Josh? What? You're going to be okay. I hang up and look at the ceiling and think, I know I will. I just need a minute to believe it. He's back before I finish my dinner. Campus dining hall pasta that's serviceable in the way that all campus dining hall pasta is serviceable. The kind of food that exists to fill a function rather than create an experience. And when I return to the room, he's sitting on his bed with a notebook open, writing something by hand. He looks up when I come in, and there's that quality again, that specific attentiveness, like he was waiting. I got you something, he says, and reaches over to his desk without waiting for my response. He holds out a small paper cup from the coffee cart I'd passed on my way back from the dining hall. Americano, you used to drink those. I stare at the cup. I stare at him. You remember what I used to drink. I remember a lot of things. His voice is even. Not smug about it. If anything, it sounds like an admission. The honest answer to that is, so do I, and I'm not ready to say it, so I take the cup, because I want the coffee, which I'd been craving since the drive and hadn't gotten around to buying, and I sit at my own desk without looking at him. Thank you, I say to my laptop screen. You're welcome. He doesn't push further. Doesn't make a remark about the fact that I'm thanking my laptop. Just accepts the minimal offering and returns to his notebook. We exist in the same space for another hour without speaking, and it's almost bearable. More than bearable, if I'm being honest with myself, which I am trying to get better at. It's just two people in a room. It's manageable. The first week of college moves fast in the way that new places always do, when everything is unfamiliar enough that your brain is working overtime just to process it. New spaces take processing power, where the bathrooms are, how the card system works at the dining hall, which stairs lead to a dead end, and which ones actually take you where you're trying to go. Classes, professor names and building numbers, and the particular logic of a new campus layout. Reading, syllabi, with the specific mixture of interest and low-grade dread that characterizes the start of every academic semester. The journalism department orientation on Thursday is where things start to feel possible again in the way I'd hoped they would. I arrive early, which is a reflex, and sit near the middle, not front row, not back, and I'm reviewing the departmental handbook when someone sits down next to me and says, without preamble, they list this as a 3-hour orientation, but the email from last year's cohort said it's actually 2.5, which means either they're padding the schedule or last year was exceptional. Do you have any intelligence on this? I look up. The person next to me is dark-haired and dark-eyed, with earrings up one ear and a spiral notebook covered in ink-stained fingerprints. She looks at me with an expression of genuine inquiry. Zero intelligence, I say. This is my first time. Mine too. Mine too, Sophie, she says, extending a hand. Josh. Okay. She opens her notebook. I'm going to take very good notes, and you can compare against yours after. Collectively, we'll have twice the coverage. She becomes my first real friend at Caldwell before the orientation is even over. Through the specific alchemy of shared attention and compatible senses of humor, and the particular ease of meeting someone who is exactly as interested in things as you are. Roberto. I don't call him that yet, in my head. In my head, he's still Frost, the way he always was at school, the way distance has a name. Turns out to be an architecture student. I find this out not from him, but from the course schedule I accidentally see on his desk when I'm looking for my phone charger one morning. His days run long on Mondays and Wednesdays, short on Fridays. He comes back from studio smelling like pencil shavings and something chemical that takes me a while to identify as the markers they use for architectural rendering, the kind with the sharp, specific smell that clings. He keeps leaving me things. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Small, unannounced things, placed and retreated from without comment. A second cup of coffee on the desk when I wake up for my early Tuesday class. A note on the bathroom mirror. Sticky note, his handwriting, which is surprisingly neat, about a dining hall dessert special that turns out to be genuinely excellent. The window cracked open just the right amount before I come back from my evening run, because at some point in the first week, I'd mentioned offhandedly to Sophie on the phone. In a conversation I thought was private, but which I'd apparently had at normal volume, that I liked sleeping in cool air. None of it comes with explanation or expectation. He doesn't make a production of any of it, doesn't mention it, doesn't look for a reaction. He just leaves things and says nothing about them and waits. I don't know what he's waiting for. I pretend I don't know what he's waiting for. Some mornings the coffee is still warm and I wrap both hands around the cup and look at the window and think about the specific patience required to do something like this, to offer and offer and offer, without demanding anything back. Tell me about him, Sophie says on a Friday afternoon. We're in the campus library, 3rd floor, supposedly studying for the quiz in our shared intro seminar, actually mostly talking because the talking is easier and the quiz is Thursday. This roommate situation. You keep making that face. What face? The face where you're thinking about something that's bothering you but you don't want to bring it up. It's a very specific face. The jaw does a thing. My jaw doesn't do a thing. It does a very specific thing. Small tightening, left side. She mimes it at me, inaccurately but with conviction. You've been making it all week. I tell her the condensed version. High school Frost, Roberto. I correct myself. And Sophie notices the correction and files it away with the expression of someone who will absolutely return to it. 2 years of being the target of someone's particular brand of cruelty. And now, 6 feet of dorm room space between us and a coffee that was still warm this morning when I picked it up. What kind of cruelty? Sophie asks, not lightly. She's watching me carefully, the quiz forgotten. I think about how to answer that. The word cruelty feels simultaneously right and slightly too large, or maybe exactly large enough. Nothing physical, I say finally. He never. It wasn't that. It was more like, I try to find the right words, which takes a minute. He had this way of knowing exactly what you were most uncertain about and making sure you thought about it constantly. Comments that were technically deniable. Things said to other people within earshot. Invitations that existed only to be visibly withheld. That kind of thing. Sophie is quiet for a moment. That's actually worse, she says. That kind of thing gets under your skin in a way that leaves no evidence, so you can't even point to it clearly. It just becomes part of how you think about yourself. Yeah. I look down at my notebook. Yeah, that's exactly it. By the end of sophomore year, I couldn't walk into a room without wondering what I'd done wrong that I wasn't aware of yet. And now, he's being nice to you. He's leaving me coffee and sticky notes, while also not pushing for anything. He says things, but he doesn't escalate. He doesn't expect responses to the things he does. He just does them and leaves it there. Sophie taps her pen against the table, a thoughtful rhythm. That's actually a very sophisticated approach. It's something, I allow. It's interesting, she says. And she's wearing the expression she wears when she's building a theory, which I've learned to recognize in the 3 weeks since I met her. I decide not to ask what the theory is. I'm not ready for Sophie's theories about this yet. The first real conversation happens at the end of week 2, and it happens because of a thunderstorm. It's the kind of storm that arrives without much warning. The weather app says 40% chance of showers and delivers instead a full theatrical production lightning and all the rest of it. The kind of rain that turns the view from our second-floor window into a gray wash of nothing and makes the world outside feel very far away. Roberto comes back from studio at 8 in the evening, soaked through his jacket, hair plastered flat, shoes squeaking on the linoleum. He looks like the rain caught him mid-thought and refused to let him go. But more than the rain, he looks exhausted. The particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with physical tiredness. The kind that comes from a day where things went wrong in ways you'd been afraid of. Where you showed someone something you'd worked on and watched it not be enough. He peels off his jacket, drapes it over the back of the desk chair, sits on the edge of his bed, puts his head in his hands. I watch him for a moment. Then, without entirely deciding to, I get up and go to the small kettle we've established as shared kitchen property. The arrangement happened without being discussed, like most of our small domestic negotiations, through the logic of proximity and need. And I make tea. Chamomile, because it was already out on the counter and because chamomile is what you give someone who looks the way he looks right now. I put the mug on the bedside table between our beds, on his side, and I go back to my desk. After a while, he picks it up. "Thank you," he says to the mug, the way people talk to objects when they don't quite have the energy to direct things at people. "Don't make a thing of it." "I won't?" He drinks. The rain batters the window. I had a critique today. I didn't ask, but something in me, loosened by the tea, by the storm, by the particular intimacy of a small room when the weather outside is doing something dramatic, says, "How'd it go?" Professor said my concept was derivative. He turns the mug in his hands, studies the rim of it. "I've been working on this project for 3 weeks. It's the most substantial thing I've done since starting here." "That's rough," I say, which is inadequate, but true. "Yeah," he exhales. "Yeah, it was." Silence. The rain. The specific sound of water against glass when the wind is behind it. "For what it's worth," I say before I can talk myself out of it because the kindness wants out and there's no real reason to keep it in. "The stuff on your desk, the sketches, they don't look derivative to me. They look like someone who knew what they were trying to say." Roberto looks up. Something shifts in his expression. "You looked at my sketches?" "They're on your desk. It's a small room. I wasn't trying to." "I know. I'm not." He shakes his head slightly, recalibrating. "I just mean, thank you for saying that. It's just an observation. Still." He sets the mug down, and for a moment the thing he wants to say is visible on his face, and then he decides not to say it. "Roberto," I say, his name again, and again that quality of new, of something being used for the first time. He goes very still at the sound of it. "What?" He looks at me. "I was going to apologize." "You've said you're sorry already." "I know, but I mean a real one, a full one." He doesn't look away. "I don't think you want that yet." I sit with that. He's right, not yet, but not never. "Maybe not yet," I say. "Okay." He picks up his tea again. "When you do, I'll be ready." I look back at my work. The rain keeps going. He keeps sitting there, warm mug in his hands, wet jacket dripping on the chair, and somehow the room feels less like an inconvenient shared space and more like somewhere two people are both actually present. I fall asleep that night thinking about what it means to be ready, and whether I'm closer to it than I thought. There's a specific kind of attention you pay to someone when you're trying to figure out who they are now, separate from who they were. It's not the same as forgiveness. It doesn't lead there automatically, or maybe at all, not on any predetermined timeline. It's more like archaeology. You keep your tools careful and your expectations low, and you pay attention to the layers. I pay attention to Roberto. He wakes up at 6:30 on weekdays. Not with an alarm, or if there's an alarm, it's silent because I never hear it. He's just awake quietly, like his body knows. He makes his bed before he does anything else, every morning, before coffee or checking his phone. It's a thing I notice because I don't make mine until after coffee, and he's already neat and done by the time I'm sitting up and working out what day it is. He does it well too. The corners are tucked with a precision that's not obsessive, but is clearly intentional. He has a playlist he listens to while he works. I can't hear it through his headphones, but I can see him occasionally track the beat with one finger on the edge of his desk, a small unconscious movement. It's subtle. It's the kind of thing you only notice if you're already looking, and the question of when exactly I started looking is one I keep meaning to examine more closely. He reads before bed, real books, not his phone, and he reads slowly. I can see the page he's on, sometimes, when the angle of the lamp is right and it doesn't change fast. He's the kind of reader who goes back and rereads passages rather than pushing forward. I am the same kind of reader. I notice this with a feeling I choose not to name. He has two plants now, the succulent, plus a small trailing thing in a terracotta pot that appeared on the windowsill in week 3 with no explanation. He waters them both on Sundays with a measuring precision that involves an actual small measuring cup, which I find, against my will, a little endearing. He talks to them sometimes, very quietly, when he thinks I'm asleep. I don't think he knows I can hear. He never takes the last of anything shared. The milk, the dish soap, the particular brand of instant coffee I'd bought and left on the counter, the good tea. He replaces things before they run out, not after, as though he's been tracking the levels. He's observant about it in a way that suggests it's habit formed from genuine attention, not performed for effect. He gets disappointed about his work sometimes, and when he does, he's quiet about it in a way that is entirely different from the quiet of someone who is ignoring you. It's the quiet of someone processing something internally and not wanting to contaminate the air with it. I recognize this quality because I have it too. My sister calls it the Mac withdrawal, the tendency to go inward when things go wrong rather than outward. These are the things I learned. I log them without meaning to, the way you log the geography of a place you spend a lot of time, until you know instinctively where all the corners are. Sophie meets him in week 4, when she comes to pick me up for a study session, and he happens to be in the room, sitting cross-legged on his bed going through architectural reference images on his tablet. The introduction is brief and slightly charged because Roberto clearly knows who she is. I'd mentioned Sophie in passing more than once, and Sophie knows who he is in the way that people know things they've been told. Which is to say, she's watching him with the precise, unblinking gaze of someone who has decided to take their time forming a judgment. Roberto is polite, not performatively so, not the kind of politeness that's putting on a show for an audience. He says hello, asks if we're studying for the midterms coming up, offers the use of the room's kettle before we head out. He makes a specific, considered observation about the article draft he'd seen on my desk that morning, which is the kind of thing you only say if you actually read it. Sophie notes all of this. I can tell because she has a quality of very organized attention when she's gathering data. In the elevator down, she's quiet for exactly 3 floors. He's very aware of you, she says as the doors open. What does that mean? It means that for the entire time I was in that room, he oriented toward you in every small way a person can orient toward someone else without moving. His attention was on you even when he was looking at other things. She holds the door open for me. Like someone who has spent a long time caring about where a specific person is in a room. I look at her. That's a very specific observation, I say. I'm a specific person. She lets the door go. I'm just saying, whatever you think is happening in that room, it's happening on both sides. I know, I say, because I do. I've known for weeks. The attention goes both ways, and I've been very carefully not deciding what to do about that. The conversation happens. The full one, the one with real words attached to it, on a night when neither of us had planned for anything significant. We're both in the room on a Wednesday, both up later than usual with the specific tired energy of a week that's been heavy with deadlines. Roberto is at his desk, surrounded by architecture drawings and the pleasant mess of a project in progress. I'm on my bed with my laptop working on a draft for the campus paper, my first real piece, a profile of a faculty member in the environmental sciences department who had a second career as a competitive marathon runner, which was more interesting than it sounds. I don't know what makes him stop. He just does. Sets down his pencil, sits back in his chair, and then he says, "Can I tell you something?" You don't have to respond to it, you don't have to do anything with it. I just need to say it, and I need you to hear it. I look up from my screen. His back is still half turned to me, chair angled in a way that means he's not fully facing me, and I think I understand. He needs the slight buffer of not meeting my eyes to get through what comes next. Okay, I say. A pause. The kind where someone is arranging something in a careful order because the order matters, because the wrong sequence could make it sound like an excuse, and he doesn't want it to be that. In high school, he says, I'm not going to make excuses. I was a person who made your life harder than it needed to be, and I knew it while I was doing it, and I did it anyway, and I've thought about it a lot since then. Almost every day. I want you to know that. He's speaking carefully, word by word, not reciting something prepared, working through it in real time. What I did wasn't dramatic in the ways people might expect. It wasn't the kind of thing that gets a name in a movie. But I know that what it was deliberate. I targeted the things I thought you were most uncertain about, and I made sure you stayed uncertain about them. I knew what I was doing. I want you to know that I know. Silence. I don't fill it. I was also, he continues, slower now, feeling his way through something more difficult. I was also working through something that I didn't understand yet, and I'm still not going to use that as an excuse because it isn't one. But I think it's true that some of what I directed at you came from a place that had nothing to do with you being worth it. It had everything to do with me being terrified of something I couldn't name yet, and you being, he pauses, adjacent to that thing, in a way that I punished you for and shouldn't have. His voice goes lower. That's the closest I can get to explaining it without making it sound like I'm explaining it away. I don't want to explain it away. I just want you to have the full picture. He finally turns around. His expression is open, the way I've started to learn it can be, without armor, without the angles I remember from before. Just the thing underneath, laid out. I'm sorry, he says, for all of it, the specific things, the shape of it as a whole, the way it accumulated over 2 years. I'm sorry that you had to carry that, and I'm sorry that the first time I'm saying any of this is now, here, after so long. I should have found a way to say it sooner. I look at him for a long moment. Here is the thing I know, that I've been building toward for weeks, that I've been sitting with and turning over and testing from different angles. People are not the single worst version of themselves. They are every version, all at once, and what matters is which one they're working toward being. I believe this. I've always believed it, even in the years when it was hard to extend that logic to the specific person sitting across from me right now. I know you are, I say. I believe you. Roberto lets out a breath that sounds like it has been held for a very long time. Something in his shoulders changes, like something set down. That doesn't mean we're all the way good, I say. I don't know what that means yet, what good looks like from here. But I believe you're sorry, and I believe you understand what you're sorry for. That's where I am right now. That's enough, he says quickly. That's more than enough, thank you. I look back at my laptop. My draft is still open, half finished, the cursor blinking in the middle of a sentence about the particular joy of running the last mile. What were you so scared of? I ask to my screen, because it's easier to say it without looking at him. In high school. You said you were scared of something. A long pause. I let it exist. You, he says, quietly, then, the way I felt about you. My hands go still on the keyboard. The room doesn't do anything dramatic. The air conditioning keeps humming. Outside, someone walks past the door, their footsteps muffled through the wall. The world maintains its baseline indifference. You don't have to, he starts. I know, I say. I'm just sitting with it. Take whatever time you need. And he means it. He turns back to his drawings quietly and doesn't look at me again for the rest of the evening. He doesn't push or redirect or ask questions. He just gives me the room, the literal and figurative room, and I sit with the weight of what he said, and the night moves slowly around us. And somewhere around midnight, I close my laptop and say good night, and he says good night back. And I lie in the dark thinking about what it means when something you've spent years believing, that someone simply didn't like you, didn't want you to take up space, turns out to have a different explanation entirely. October comes in cool and golden the way campuses look best. All old brick and leaf color, and that specific autumn quality of light that makes everything look more significant than it is, or maybe exactly as significant as it is. I forget to follow up on the room transfer list. I realized this one morning in the first week of October, sitting at my desk with coffee in hand, and I sit with the realization for a full minute before I close my email and go to class. I don't reopen it. Sophie notices, of course. Sophie notices everything, files it, and retrieves it at the moment of maximum usefulness. "You've stopped talking about transferring rooms," she says over coffee one afternoon, the kind of casual observation that isn't casual at all. "There's nothing to transfer to. The list is long." "Josh?" "Sophie." She cups her mug in both hands and watches me with the particular Sophie look. Patient, very interested, giving nothing away about what she already knows. "Are you glad you haven't transferred?" I think about this. Actually think about it, rather than saying the first deflection that comes to mind. "I'm not unhappy about it," I say finally, which is more complicated than it sounds. She lets that sit, gives it room to breathe. "He's still leaving you things?" "He made dinner last Thursday." Off her look, it's a hot plate situation, nothing elaborate, pasta with a brown butter sauce. "It was good." "It was good," she repeats, in the tone of someone who is doing something specific with the repetition. "Don't," I tell her. "I haven't said a word." "You're thinking loudly. You have a loud thinking expression." "I do have that." She sets down her mug. "What I think, since you're clearly going to make me say it, is that whatever is happening in that room is starting to look less like surviving an uncomfortable situation and more like something that you're not entirely unhappy is happening." That's a lot of negatives for one sentence. I'm being careful with the language because I can tell you need me to be careful. She looks at me, direct and kind in equal measure. "I just think it's worth naming what you're actually experiencing, so you can think about it clearly." I wrap both hands around my mug. "It's complicated," I say. "Everything worth anything is," she says. That's not an argument against it. The book conversation happens because of a secondhand find. I'm reading from my Intro to Media Theory class, a thick anthology. The kind with dense margins and annotation-dense pages and that particular smell of aged paper that I have loved since I was a child, and people took me to libraries instead of playgrounds. I've got it open on my lap when Roberto comes in from his Friday studio session, wind-blown and carrying the specific creative tiredness of someone who has spent several hours making things. He glances at the cover as he passes. Then he stops. "Where did you find that edition?" He sounds genuinely surprised, the kind of surprise that's about delight more than anything else. I look at the cover. "Secondhand bookshop near campus, the one with the orange door." "Why?" He reaches into his bag and produces, I am not making this up, the same book. Different edition. Older, slightly battered, with a cracked spine that suggests heavy use and a life lived in bags and on bedside tables. "I found mine in a box at a garage sale 2 years ago," he says, turning it over. "I've never seen another copy in person. You don't see this one in regular bookshops." I look at the 2 books. "Your professor assigned this for architecture?" "No." He holds his copy and turns it in his hands, and there's something in the gesture. The way he holds the thing he's read and reread, that feels familiar. I just liked it. Specifically the chapter on the semiotics of built space. It changed how I thought about what I was trying to do with my work. He says this simply, without any particular expectation of a response, like it's just a thing that's true about him, and he doesn't mind me knowing. I look down at my copy. That chapter is one I'd marked heavily, from a completely different angle, not architecture but the media that covers buildings, the stories that accrue around spaces, the journalism of place. "I didn't know you read theory for fun," I say. "I didn't know you were in media studies. Journalism mainly. The theory is a minor." I flip to the marked page. Chapter 9. "Chapter 9, he confirms. And then something happens in his expression. A small hesitation, followed by a decision. There's an argument in it that I've been having with the text for 2 years and never gotten anywhere with. I keep coming back to it and I keep losing. Which argument? He tells me. It's about the difference between spaces that invite and spaces that passively permit. Whether there's a meaningful distinction, architecturally, and whether a building can actually be designed to make people feel welcomed, or whether that's all projection. He has a position, and it's a sharp one, clearly lived in, clearly chewed on, from multiple angles. I argue back. My position from the journalism angle is entirely different. I'm thinking about the language used to describe spaces, the words chosen in architectural reviews, the editorial choices that tell people what to feel before they've ever stepped inside a building. We find the seam between our two framings and pull at it, and an hour passes without my noticing. At some point, I realize I've leaned forward in my chair, that I'm talking with my hands, which I only do when I'm genuinely engaged. That Roberto is watching me with an expression I've started to learn means he's actually interested, not being polite, not performing attention, but following the thread with the specific focus of someone who is thinking in real time alongside what's being said. I sit back. Sorry, I got into it. Don't apologize for that. His voice is softer than usual. That's the most you've talked to me since. He stops himself, recalibrates. Since before. Since high school, I finish. You can say it. Since high school, he echoes. And then, quietly, looking down at the two copies of the same book sitting on his desk side by side, I'm sorry, Josh. The room gets very still. Not sorry as a preamble to something else. Not sorry, leading into an explanation or a clarification or a, but you have to understand the context. G-A-G-E. Geezed, the word, clean and complete, set down between us like something heavy he'd been carrying for a long time and had finally found the right surface to put it on. I know, I say after a moment. I know you are. It's not forgiveness, but it's not nothing. It's a door, open slightly, light coming through. I don't bring up what he told me, the scared thing, the specific thing, for almost a week. Not because I'm avoiding it, though maybe I am, a little. Mostly because I need to find the words before I use them, and the thing I want to say requires words I haven't assembled yet. Roberto doesn't bring it up either. He doesn't retreat behind distance, though. If anything, he's more present than before, not in an overwhelming way, just solidly, consistently there. Like he shed something heavy and can now stand fully upright in the room. It's a Sunday coffee shop run, the beginning of what becomes a habit, what becomes the Sunday thing. When something clicks into place, we're sitting across from each other at a small table near the window, the kind that gets enough light to make you feel like the weather is better than it actually is. He has an Americano, and I have the same, and there's a comfortable silence that has developed between us over the weeks, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. I want to ask you something, I say. Okay. When you said you were scared of how you felt about me, I say it looking at my coffee rather than at him. Is that something you understood at the time? Or something you figured out later? A pause. I can feel him considering carefully, the way he considers things he wants to get right. Later, he says, much later. At the time, I just knew that something about you made me feel exposed somehow. Like you could see something I wasn't ready for anyone to see. I didn't have a name for it. I just knew I didn't like the feeling, and I didn't handle not liking it well. How long until you had the name for it? 18, maybe just after. He wraps his hands around his mug. My grandmother helped. She was good, at asking the right question at the right moment. Your grandmother, I say. The photograph. The photograph. He nods. I look out the window at the Sunday campus, people crossing the path outside in weekend configurations, pairs and small groups, someone with a dog, someone with coffee and earphones, and the particular stride of someone going somewhere specific. Thank you for telling me, I say. The other night. All of it. All of it. Thank you for listening. I need you to know that I haven't fully processed it yet, I say. What it means. What I want to do with it. I need more time. I know, he says. I don't have any expectations. I know you don't. I look at him then, directly. That's part of why I could tell you that. He holds my gaze, something quiet and warm and steady in his. Take as much time as you need, he says. I'm not going anywhere. The studying starts sometime in mid-October after Sophie has an exam that doesn't go the way she hoped and declares that she is implementing a new system, and the new system requires a studying companion. The studying companion is me. Roberto occasionally occupies the same table, and this evolves, naturally, into the three of us at the library on Thursday evenings, each working on our own things but in the same vicinity. Sophie and Roberto's intellectual energy is, as it turns out, combustible in the best possible way. They disagree about almost everything interesting, and they disagree the way good thinkers disagree, fully, with reasons, and with genuine curiosity about the other person's position. I watch these exchanges with what I can only describe as happiness, the specific kind that comes from sitting inside a combination of things that works. On one Thursday evening, Roberto is explaining his revised project concept, the community space, the glass angles, the deliberate invitation, and Sophie leans in and starts asking questions that get more specific and more pointed. And I realize I'm watching Roberto light up, not perform enthusiasm. Actually light up, from the inside, the way people do when someone is taking something they care about seriously enough to push back on it. He catches me watching. He smiles. Not the small one he uses when things are politely okay, but the real one. The one I've only seen a few times. The one that does something specific to the mathematics of his face. I look back at my laptop. My article draft is open. I haven't typed anything in 10 minutes. I decide this is a reasonable time to take a coffee break and go to the vending machine on the second floor and stand in front of it for longer than is strictly necessary. Sophie appears beside me. You okay? Fine. You had the look again. I don't have a look. Josh, she selects her snack with great deliberateness. You really do. It happens in late November, a week before finals, in a room that has become entirely different from the room I walked into in September. The same dimensions, same furniture, same window. But different, furnished now with the specific residue of two people who have been paying attention to each other for months. His plants and my stacks of notebooks, his architectural drawings and my article drafts, shared coffee supplies. A routine of Sunday mornings and Thursday libraries and evenings that have started to feel, more and more, like something I'd choose even if I weren't already here. We're both up late. It's been a heavy week. His finals portfolio, my feature piece that's 3 rewrites deep and still not what it wants to be. Tea has been made. The snow outside, light and thoughtful, is doing the thing where it transforms the campus into something quieter and more serious. Roberto looks up from his drafting and says, "Do you want to go outside?" I look at him. Now? It's the first real snow. He says it like it explains everything, and looking at his expression, something lit up about it, something like wonder held carefully. It kind of does. We go outside without much discussion. Down the stairs, out the side door, into the cold that hits immediately and completely. Campus is mostly empty at this hour, the paths traced in the thin beginning of white, the buildings gold-lit from within. We walk without a particular destination, and it feels like the right pace for not having a particular destination, unhurried and comfortable and slightly outside of normal time, the way snowfall tends to be. My professor approved the revised concept today, Roberto says. The one he called derivative. I look at him sideways. Yeah? He said it showed a clarity of intention he hadn't seen in the first version. He pauses, and the pause sounds like someone trying to hold something carefully. He said, I seemed to have figured out what I actually wanted to build. Did you? He glances at me. The snow is in his hair, light and scattered. Yeah, I think I did. We walk. A path curves around the library and opens onto a smaller courtyard. I don't come too often. I don't know if Roberto does either. Or if he brought us here on purpose, surrounded by low stone walls and a fountain turned off for winter, standing quiet and dry. He stops here, hands in his coat pockets, and tilts his face up toward the falling snow with an expression so unguarded it catches me. He looks peaceful, in the deepest way. Like something that had been wound tight for a long time has finally been given permission to uncoil. Can I ask you something? I say, yes. The photograph on your mirror. I know you told me about your grandmother. I look at him, but I want to ask, why that photo, specifically? What is it about that particular one, he considers. She's laughing in it. Someone caught her off guard with something funny, I don't even know what, and she's mid-laugh in a way that she'd have hated if she'd known the photo was being taken. She was very composed about photographs as a rule. A small, real smile. But it's the most herself she ever looked, to me. The most completely herself. I keep it there so I remember that being completely yourself is possible. I look at him for a moment. The snow is still falling, quiet and unhurried. That's a beautiful way to think about a photograph, I say. She was a beautiful way to think about things. He turns to look at me, and his eyes are very dark in the low winter light. She said, the last thing she really said to me, the last real conversation. She said, don't make someone else pay for your fear. She didn't know specifically what she was talking about. She was talking about something else. But when I understood, later, what I'd done, his voice doesn't break, but it goes careful, like someone navigating something fragile. It was her voice I heard. We stand in the courtyard. The snow comes down and doesn't stop, and the night is very quiet around us. Roberto, I say. And then I stop, because I know what I want to say, and I'm deciding whether to say it. And the decision is actually not hard. It's the simplest thing I've come to in months. I want to try, I say. Whatever this is, I want to find out if it's something. He goes very still. You're sure, he says. Not a challenge. A genuine question, offered carefully. I've been thinking about it since September, I say. I'm sure. He takes one step closer. Lifts his hand and I see him hesitate. The same way he hesitates before everything, the asking without words that he's done since the first week. I close the small distance between us. His hand comes to my jaw, gentle and exact, like something he's been figuring out how to do for a long time and is finally getting to do correctly. He looks at me, one more check. Then he kisses me. It's careful and slow and cold from the November air and warm from everything underneath that, and when it ends, he doesn't move far back. Just far enough to look at me again, searching, making sure. Okay? He says softly. More than, I say. And I close the distance again, and this time it's me who goes first, and this time nothing about it is tentative. The snow is heavier when we walk back. It doesn't feel like a walk back. It feels like the beginning of a direction. He holds my hand, I let him and hold back. And we walk through the white softening campus without hurrying, and I think this is a thing that happened. Not inevitable. Not the conclusion of some story that was always heading here. A choice made by two people across the distance of everything that had come before, who decided to keep walking toward each other rather than stop. In the room, we make more tea. Stand at the small counter with our coats still on, because the room needs a minute to warm up from the cold we've brought back inside. And we're close in a way that is new and that fits precisely the shape of everything that's been building. He's warm through his coat. His shoulder is against mine. I need to tell you something, Roberto says. Okay. In high school, he says, you were the first person I was ever. He searches for it, specifically about. I didn't understand what that meant. But I know that it was about you in particular, not in general. And I know that I made you pay for my inability to understand it, and I am deeply, specifically sorry for that, for the particular nature of it. I look at him. I know, I say, and I'm not. I'm not going to tell you it's all okay, because some of it isn't yet. There are things I'm still working on, things that got into my head that I'm still working to get back out. I know, but I believe that you're working on it too, and I think that's what I can say right now. That I believe you're working on it. He nods. His expression says more than words. When something from before gets triggered, I say, because this matters, because I need him to understand the shape of what we're working with, I'm going to tell you. And I need you to hear it without flinching away from it. I can do that, he says, with the particular steadiness of someone who has been preparing for this. Okay, I say, then okay. He reaches over and brushes snow. Still melting, still cold. From my hair. a gesture so precise and careful that something in my chest does a slow, significant thing. Thank you for staying, he says. I consider this. Weigh it. Thank you for being worth staying for. His breath catches slightly. That look, the overwhelmed but quiet one, the one that doesn't perform itself, that just exists. I'm going to try very hard to keep being that, he says. I know, I say. I believe that completely. Finals pass, in the particular blur of finals. The late nights and the coffee and the strange suspended time of academic urgency, which is its own complete world with its own logic. We navigate it together in the sense of being in the same place, bringing each other coffee and food and occasional updates on progress, which is a specific and useful form of companionship. There are things that need navigating. Not everything is immediately smooth, because real things aren't. One evening in December, finals week, both of us exhausted. Roberto makes a comment that's pitched wrong just slightly, and it lands against an old bruise I hadn't realized was still tender. And, for a moment, the room feels like it did in September. Like something suspended, I tell him. I say, that landed wrong, that specific tone. I don't think you meant it the way it landed, but it landed like something from before. He goes still, not defensive. He doesn't reach for an explanation or argue about intent. Tell me what it sounded like, he says. I tell him. He listens with his full attention, and when I finish, he nods once, taking it in. I'm sorry, he says. Specifically for that specific thing, in the way you experienced it. Not for what I meant, because I know I didn't mean it that way, but for the way it landed, which is what matters. I look at him. That's a good distinction, I say. My grandmother made it. A pause. She had a lot of useful things to say about what matters in an apology. She sounds like she was incredible, I say. She was the best person I've known, he says simply. I think you would have argued with her a lot. I think that means she would have loved you. Winter break is the first test of distance, which is something I don't expect to notice as much as I do. I go home to Dana, who extracts every detail with the precision of a trained investigator, and then sits back with the expression of someone whose theory has been vindicated. I knew it in September, she says. The minute you said he'd made you coffee. That's not the specific brand you drink, Josh, that you hadn't told him. He remembered from high school. She points at me. That's not nothing. It's complicated. Everything worth anything is complicated. That's not news. She pulls her knees up on the couch. Are you happy? I think about it. The specific shape of things. Roberto's handwriting on sticky notes. Chapter 9. Snowfall in a courtyard. His hand in mine on the way back. The particular texture of a room that has become, without my planning it, somewhere I want to be. Yeah, I say. I think I actually am. Dana's face does the thing where she's trying not to smile and not succeeding. Good, she says. That's all I wanted to know. We text more than we probably should during the break, which neither of us comments on. He sends me a photograph of a building he passes on a walk home. Something from 100 years ago with a specific detail about the entrance archway that he thinks I'd find interesting. Given what I said about invitations in architecture during one of our earlier conversations, he's right. I find it deeply interesting. We argue about it for 3 days over text. He sends me a secondhand book in the mail for Christmas. It arrives with a sticky note inside the cover that says, Chapter 4. I need your read on this and nothing else. I read Chapter 4 twice before New Year's and have opinions ready. Spring semester starts with warmth beginning to come back into the air, incremental and uncertain, the way warmth returns. The days get longer in small installments. The plants on the windowsill, 4 of them now. I have been drafted into the plant care rotation by unspoken collective agreement. Respond to the increasing light with the visible enthusiasm that Roberto tracks with genuine satisfaction. The trailing one is doing a new shoot, he tells me one Sunday morning, with the tone of someone reporting good news. That's great, I say. You sound less invested than the situation warrants. I am invested. I watered it on Wednesday. With the right amount. With the measured amount. I used your measuring cup. He looks at me with an expression that, on anyone else, I'd describe as fond. On Roberto, I'm learning, it looks like, the quiet, specific satisfaction of someone who is exactly where they want to be. I've become fluent in his expressions, the way you become fluent in the grammar of a place you spend a lot of time. We walk to the coffee shop. It's still the Sunday thing. It has been the Sunday thing for months, and neither of us has felt the need to name or qualify it, which is, I've decided, exactly right. The naming of things can wait until there's a reason to name them. In the meantime, we walk. He holds my hand on the walk. This is also simply how it is, the way most things between us have simply become how they are, without announcement or ceremony. His hand is warm even in the cool spring air, and I fit against his side in a way that feels like something that was always going to be the case, given enough time. The campus newspaper publishes my feature piece in March. The Marathon Professor 1, rewritten 4 times, finally right. Roberto reads it the morning it comes out, sitting at his desk with the printed copy, and when he finishes, he sets it down and says, "Josh." "What? This is really good." I look at him. "Thanks." I'm serious. He turns the page over in his hands, the same gesture he uses with books he wants to understand more fully. The part about how the finish line feels the same at every distance, that she's never actually chasing the finish line, but always the next mile. That's the thing, isn't it? That's what the whole piece is about, but you put it in the most specific possible place. That's really well done. I don't know what to do with how much that lands. It lands fully, in the specific place where things matter, because he read it carefully enough to see what it was trying to do. Thank you, I say, for reading it that way. It deserved to be read that way. I look back at my laptop. I'm smiling in a way I don't try to control. The portfolio review happens in late April. Roberto has been working toward it since January, refining and expanding the community space project. The glass angles and the interior light, the building designed to make people feel held and visible at the same time. He's been up late the week before, and I've been there for the last 2 of those nights, sitting with my own work, bringing food at intervals, saying nothing that needed saying. The night before, he stops working at midnight and sits back and looks at the model and doesn't say anything for a while. "Talk to me," I say. He's quiet for a moment. "I'm afraid they won't see what it's trying to do." "Tell me what it's trying to do," I say. "Pretend I've never heard it." He turns to look at me. Then he turns back to the model and he tells me, from the beginning, what the building is, what it's trying to feel like from inside, the specific decisions, the angles, the materials, the light, the proportions of the entrance, and what each one is doing and why. He talks for 20 minutes, and I listen the way I've learned he needs to be listened to, fully, without interrupting, following the logic of it all the way to the end. When he finishes, I say, anyone who doesn't see what that's trying to do isn't looking. He's quiet, and if they don't look, I say, that's on them, not on the work. He exhales, leans back. "Thank you. That's what I'm here for." He looks at me then, the look that I've been cataloging and am still honestly not entirely prepared for when it arrives at full intensity, the one that says, "You are the thing I was scared of, and now I understand why, and I am very glad I didn't let the fear be the end of the story." "I'm glad you stayed," he says, "in September, when you could have left." "I'm glad I stayed too," I say, "mostly. There was a week in October when you reorganized the counter, and I couldn't find the coffee for 3 days." He laughs, the real one, the surprised, reluctant one that sounds like it caught him off guard. "I labeled everything. Your labels are very small. They're a normal size. Roberto." The font was 6 point. He's still laughing, and I'm looking at him, and the room is warm, and the plants are growing, and the campus is moving toward its last weeks of spring. And I think, here is what a thing built carefully looks like. Here is what patience and honesty and the willingness to stay look like from the inside. On the last day of the school year, we stand in the mostly empty room. Boxes half-packed, the 4 plants carefully wrapped for transport, because of course, they are his architectural drawings rolled and protected. My journalism drafts in labeled folders. And there's something specific about the light in late May. the way it comes through the window and catches the ordinary dust of a lived-in room and makes it look golden and a little sacred. Everything we leave will stay until September. Everything we take matters. Same room next year? Roberto asks. He's leaning against his desk with his arms crossed, not tense but relaxed, like a person who has arrived somewhere they wanted to arrive. His expression is the open one. It's almost always the open one now. I look around the room. The bare mattresses that we'll come back to, the empty shelves that'll fill up again, the windowsill where the plants have left ghost rings and the dust from their terracotta bases. Same room, I say. He smiles. The full one. The surprised to find himself this happy one that I have, at this point, completely given up trying to be immune to. We finish packing. Load things into cars, down the stairs, into the May warmth that has finally committed to being genuinely warm. Sophie finds us in the quad, with a bag over each shoulder and takes a photograph. She does this several times throughout the year. Documents things with the slightly anthropological attention of someone who is also living them. And I see it later that night on my phone while I'm sitting in the car waiting for the GPS to load. In the photograph, Roberto and I are standing on the path outside Hargrove Hall with the spring campus behind us. Sophie has caught us mid-something, the tail end of a conversation, or the beginning of one. It's hard to tell. The point is, neither of us is looking at the camera, we're looking at each other. I look at the photograph for a long time. I think about what it shows, not just the obvious thing, the two of us and the way we're looking, but the context it doesn't show. The room it's outside of. The months inside it. The difficult, specific, incremental work of two people building something out of materials that included, among other things, a shared history of harm, and 2 copies of the same obscure book, and a series of small, intentional kindnesses that accumulated over time into something I couldn't ignore. He made my high school years hell. He also, and I say this now with the clarity of distance and the patience of a year spent paying attention, was a terrified person who didn't understand himself and handled that badly, and who spent the time since learning how to do better, and who does better, who is doing better, actively, every day, in the specific and particular ways that matter. I'm not going to tell you it's a simple story. It's not. Forgiveness isn't simple. Trust rebuilt is different from trust that was never broken. And I would be lying if I said there were no moments this year when something pressed on the old place and I had to tell him, and he had to hear it, and we had to do the work of addressing it instead of going around it. There are going to be more of those moments. That's how real things work. But here is what else is true. Roberto Frost pays attention. He shows up. He reads things carefully and argues about them honestly, and makes coffee with the right amount of everything, and talks to plants when he thinks nobody's listening, and keeps a photograph of the best person he knew in the corner of his mirror. So he remembers that being completely yourself is possible. He says the hard things when they need saying, and he hears the hard things when they need hearing. And he looks at me like I'm a place he's finally figured out how to build toward. I think that's something like a miracle. I think I'll take it. If you made it to the end, you're my kind of person. Leave a subscribe. Comment down your favorite part of the story, and if you want early access to videos, exclusive content, or just want to support the channel, make sure to join our Patreon. Link is in the description. Even one member genuinely means the world to me. See you in the next one.